Potential Experts is brought to you by Vermonti's. Craving something cheesy, crispy, and unforgettably delicious? Say hello to Vermonti's Pizza, where every slice is a love letter to the Green Mountain State. From classic pepperoni to our legendary mac and cheese pizza, we're serving up bold flavors you won't find anywhere else. Order online and get 20% off your first order with promo code Vermonti20. That's VERMONTY20. Hit us up on Instagram at Vermonti's_Vermont Eats to see what's hot and fresh right now. Vermonti's Pizza, homegrown, handmade, and hella good. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Potential Experts. We got an awesome show planned for you guys today. And I said something similar the last time Ethan and Brandon weren't on. I called it addition by subtraction, which is undeniably true. But today, not only do we have addition by subtraction, we also have addition by addition, because our baseball fans might remember Tom Newman came on to preview the MLB playoffs, and he is back once again to preview not only the World Baseball Classic final and the tournament, well, kind of review most of the tournament in general, but also talk a little March Madness, the greatest postseason tournament in all of sports. Couldn't be more excited. We're recording this Tuesday night, so when you're listening to this, we're looking at Thursday morning, so this is perfect time. Thursday morning, your way to work, get those brackets in. Newman, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thrilled to be on here as March Madness officially kicks off.
It's phenomenal feeling. So Newman, I want to start, I know I sent you, some of the things we're going to talk about today. I actually want to start with what I might be calling, and it's probably not just me, a lot of people might be calling the region of death. That is the region that you find your Dukies in, the region that I find my Johnnies in, where the top 5 teams are in this order from seed: Duke, UConn, Michigan State, Kansas, and St. John's. And that doesn't even account for other scrappy teams like a TCU who's playing good ball. I'm not going to give the nod to well, actually, I was going to say I don't want to give the nod to Ohio State, but even Ohio State's playing good ball at this point as well. There's just multiple other teams that are playing solid ball, even outside of those top 5. Newman, what is your reaction as a big-time Duke fan? And do you see your Dukies getting out of that? You were unimpressed about their run in the ACC tournament. They still, of course, won that, defeating Virginia in a closely contested matchup. What are the vibes from Duke Kingdom right now? The brotherhood, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot there, and I don't know how anybody could have witnessed Selection Sunday and not come away thinking to themselves, this is the bracket you give the number 1 overall seed. I know there's a lot of moving parts, and I don't mean to armchair quarterback the committee, because I think that job really is one of those that's a lot harder than probably a lot of people give it credit for. But yeah, no, I can't really, I have a tough time explaining such a loaded bracket, which, again, theoretically, the number 1 overall seed is supposed to have the, I don't want to say easiest, because it's never easy to get to a Final Four, but more on that end pathway there. And boy, I mean, they just loaded up. And obviously, this is just a historical marker, but I saw some graphic where it was like the number of national championships won by programs in the East Regional is just some ungodly figure.
I believe it's 30.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
30. There we go.
And 7 amongst the active coaches, with, if I'm not mistaken with that, I think you're looking at, obviously none yet from Shire. He'll get one eventually, but 2 from Patino. Self, I believe, has 2 himself. Izzo has 1. Mick Cronin has 1, and Hurley has 2. So there's your 7 right there.
Yeah, there you go. And I guess to your other question, I do see Duke coming out of the regional because, I mean, they are the number 1 seed, and there are a lot of very, very good teams that reside in the East this year. Undeniably. Is any of them better than Duke? No. And only one team can come out. So I'm going to put my money on Duke coming out of that regional. Simple as that.
What team aside from, actually, let me rephrase, just what team in general scares you the most as you look to head to the Final Four for the second consecutive season?
So we're not talking East Regional?
No, sorry, let me be in the East region. So as you look to get to another Final Four, which team scares you the most there?
I don't hesitate to answer that question. That's Michigan State.
Is that a Tom Izzo
that
thing?
3-seeded team. You know what? That is part of it. But, I do think at high-level college basketball, as the saying goes, it's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmies and Joes. And I think, especially with Caleb Foster being out for the season for Duke, I know Shire hasn't officially said that, but if you read between the lines, Caleb Foster's out for the season. And if you noticed in the ACC tournament, Caden Boozer, the other Boozer, he was the primary ball handler, bringing up the court for Duke. And he very transparently struggled against active ball pressure against a Virginia squad. And you pair that up with Michigan State, who has one of the best freshmen in the country, who I literally think he's averaging like 9 assists per game, which, if anybody doesn't know, in a 40-minute college basketball game, Jeremy Fears, 9.2 assists per game. What wins in March, as they say? They say experience and guard play. And with Caleb Foster out, there is a very, very, very stark contrast in the starting point guards of Duke and Michigan State. So that's probably the biggest reason. And then also, veteran coach like Tom Izzo certainly plays a part of it too. So yeah, to answer your question, definitely Michigan State from both the on court and on the sideline
Is it
avenues.
that UConn doesn't scare you, or you just, and we've had this conversation before, we both think they're overrated. Is it that they don't scare you, period, or you just think they're an overrated squad and don't really match up the way Michigan State matches up against you guys?
Yeah. I mean, it's the second one. It's the second one. I think Duke, if the seeds play out like that, Duke would face UConn or Michigan State. They can't face them both, right? They would face them in the Elite Eight, and very firm believer. And I don't think this is really controversial. You make it to an Elite Eight, whatever other team is across the court from you can
Absolutely.
beat you. So yeah. I'm not going to sit here and say anybody past Siena is somebody that wouldn't have my full attention as a fan, to be honest. I just think Michigan State matches up better.
Sounds
Absolutely.
good. Let's go ahead and shift now. Let's go to the South region, just because as I'm looking at the oh,
Wait, hold up. I got some questions
go
about
for it.
the East. Um, why is St. John's a 5 seed? They beat UConn in the Big East tournament. Are they like a very good 5 seed, or I just know nothing about college basketball?
You want to feel that one, Pags, as a Johnny fan first?
Yeah, I'll feel it first. Then I'll shift it to you. I feel incredibly disrespected. Newman, you and I, we watched. We
Okay, this guy feels
I do.
disrespected.
This is I know
That's
the Big
good.
East was not a stellar conference this year. I recognize that. However, the Johnnies had only 2 losses. They've had only 2 losses in conference play. One of them was a bad loss to Providence, and the other was a 30-point thumping at the hands of UConn in Hartford. I was in the building for that one. At one point, the Johnnies missed 24 consecutive field goal attempts. It was really ugly. I'm not denying that. But with that being said, within that same time frame, the Johnnies have also beaten UConn twice, including a 20-point thumping in the Big East Championship. I really, really think that was just kind of disrespected by the committee. And I'm looking at a team like Kansas, who gets the 4 in the region. Kansas has been nothing but up and down all year. They have their own saga going on with Darren Peterson. Is he in? Is he out? Will he? Won't he? I just thought it was really, really disrespectful to a team that has 2 losses in the past 2 months, including a Big East championship. I personally wasn't a fan of it. I thought they could have gone as high as 3. I figured they would settle on 4. And when I saw that the bracket got released and they were a 5, I felt to me like, did the Big East championship, did the Big East tournament even matter? I don't really know. I'm pretty sure they won all games in the Big East tournament. Great, did I say all? It was only 3, but they won them all by double digits. And I felt like it got thrown out the window by the committee. Newman?
Yeah, I agree largely with what you say. Probably not to quite the same extent, but no, I do agree. Not only are they a 5, they're a 5 staring down a Sweet 16 matchup against the number 1 overall seed in the tourney. Going into that final with UConn, I in my head was like, I got St. John's as a 5. And I even told myself, even if they beat UConn in that Big East final, I'm not sure it's enough to change my mind on that. I think they're pretty much grounded in cement as a 5. However, I did not have them beating UConn by 20 points in the final. And that is what shifted my narrative. When I saw, in the blink of an eye, they're up 10-0, and they go on to win 252, I
Correct.
think, or
Correct.
maybe I'm wrong about that. Okay. It's beating UConn by 20 in the final that I was like, okay, they're a 4 to me, and kind of like comfortably. And when I say comfortably a 4, I'm meaning I don't struggle with them should they be a 5, but this is sort of where we differ a little bit. I don't see the case for them as a 3. Sorry. I'd pump the brakes before I got to that point, but I did see them as a 4. And so, and exactly to your point, to see them as a 5 was a surprise. To see them as a 5 with Duke, hypothetically, raised a little bit of an eyebrow for me. But what really made me question it was, as you already touched upon, St. John's is a 5 and Kansas is a 4. By what metric did Kansas, in the eyes of the committee, land on the 4 line and St. John's is on the 5? Because that one is something
Yes.
that I struggle with.
Name brand. I mean, not that St. John's is a bad brand themselves, but no one would consider St. John's a blue blood the way obviously they would consider Kansas a blue blood. Yeah, personally wasn't a fan of that, but I mean, it is what it is. Nothing we can do about it now. If I know anything about Rick Pitino and that program, who prides themselves on defensive intensity and just being the tougher team, they'll use that as bulletin board material. So I'm excited for their first round matchup versus a Northern Iowa team that was the sixth seeded team in their conference tournament. So no disrespect to them, they won it, but we're not looking at a mid major powerhouse this year. Again, they were the sixth seeded team in their respective in their.
Yeah, and see, there's the thing. We can sort of talk about who is seated where and certain things, and there are some legitimate grievances that some teams have annually. But bottom line, St. John's is a 5, Kansas is a 4. If they beat their respective opponents, they'll prove
Correct.
it on the court.
Yeah, that's about as good a way to say it. Ben, you have anything else on the East region before we shift?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a question I'll have about all the regions because, I've got some friends at work who are big NBA guys like me, and it's that time of year where we're like March basketball in the NBA is pretty awful. I don't know what's going on. Do these games matter at all? I'm not taking anything away from them. So I'm stepping back and I'm just going to be giving my attention to March Madness. But one of my favorite things about March Madness, especially in the years when the Knicks are bad, is like what are the NBA prospects here I'm looking at? I know about Cameron Boozer on Duke. I know about Darren Peterson on Kansas, and then he's kind of a weirdo. But are there any other NBA guys in this portion of the bracket I should be looking at in those first few
Newman, why don't you
games?
take that one? You're a little bit more knowledgeable on the individual players than I am. I have one guy that if you don't say him, I'll take him. But if you want to go for it, go for it.
So, I mean, if we're talking like the East Regional, of course, Duke is who I know most about, but again, they're the number 1 seed. You don't get there without talented players. Cameron Boozer is by far and away, the most the biggest name. And I think you might agree with me on this. I got him going through
Yeah,
third in the
behind
draft.
Devonta and Peterson. Yeah,
Absolutely. They do have a couple other first round talents. Pat Gunba, which is their really only post
Good
presence.
name.
Absolutely. Pat Gumba the second, I should say. Right?
Okay, fair.
Only true post presence, and Isaiah Evans, just sharpshooter from outside. But he's like a slasher too. He's a big time player. Now, full disclosure, I'm not the NBA fan, just like you, Ben, said that like you're NBA and then you occasionally, like in the month of March, dip into college. I'm like pretty consistently in college, and then occasionally I'll look to the NBA. So like
Hmm.
I know who like the best college players are, but best college players aren't always the best NBA draft prospects. Case in
Yeah.
point, I think Ohio State has one of the best players in the country in Bruce Thornton. I haven't looked at an NBA mock draft in a while. I would be shocked if Bruce Thornton is projected as being a very high pick. Please tell me if I'm
not
wrong.
that I'm aware of.
But I mean, he's okay, right. He's a senior for Ohio State. He averages over 20 a game for them. So he's a big name in that stance. But NBA draft, it's a little bit, more
Yeah.
murky. He's only, I mean,
I
he's
will.
only 6'2", and he's not. He's a point guard, but I don't think he's an NBA point guard. You know what I mean? So how he
Yeah.
translates to the next level is a little iffier.
What I have seen though in the past few years is that it is definitely I feel like more of those guys going in the draft now than there was. There was definitely a big trend for about 20 years that were they were kind of just like throwing out college production, and then you have guys like Jalen Brunson, Draymond Green falling deep in the draft despite being very good college players. And then last year you see Walter Clayton Jr., who I'm sure 8 years ago would have been a late second round pick. He went in the first round last year. So guys like that, I do think tend to have a little bit more NBA value, especially with the contract situation in the league now, where if you get a guy who could produce for your team on a rookie deal, maybe a little bit of an older rookie that can be valuable for a contending team. So guys like Bruce Thornton, he's not going to be a lottery pick, but I would not be surprised if some of those guys, they have a big tournament like Clayton did last year, and they end up being like a late first round pick. So that'll be a guy I'll look at.
Fair. Now, of course, Ohio State is like the 8 seed in their region, so they might not get more than 2 games. But you
They
never
might
know.
they might get
Yep, they might.
64 games potentially. I don't know how that would work, but it could.
So
Ben,
I'm
who is your
also,
guy?
I had one more before you can like jump down my
Okay,
throat. All right, Kansas. Some people might call me crazy here. All right, and I'm not talking NBA draft prospect like he's better than Darren Peterson, but he is an NBA draft prospect, and I think he's been better for Kansas this season than Darren Peterson. Even if you take away Peterson's time spent off the court, I think Kansas's best player is this guy named Floyd Badunga, right? A sophomore. He averages like 14 and 9 a game, and I believe he leads the Big 12 in blocks, which is arguably the best conference of college basketball this year. So when people talk about NBA draft prospects in Kansas, they immediately go to Darren Peterson, and I understand why. But Flory Badunga deserves some attention as well. Just had to throw him out there.
I feel like the only name I would add to that, and I'm not going to speak too long on him because I hate him. But Braylon Mullins from UConn, a sharpshooter from Indiana. It was like he from Indiana, obviously plays at UConn. He's projected to be a mid first rounder at this point. I think it's one of those situations where if he has a good tournament and a good combine, he could work his way into the back end of the lottery. Or I feel like people could get afraid of him because of what we saw with Liam McNeely here. What Charlotte's doing this year, not having a good rookie year, as good as Charlotte has come on in the last few months, being one of the top teams in the NBA, quite frankly. Liam McNeely is not a part of that. So I do wonder if people could draw comparisons to them. A sharpshooter from UConn that wouldn't necessarily be fair to Mullins if that's the case. But I feel like his ceiling is like pick 10 and his floor is like the back end of the first round.
Do you have a sense for how he might be trending in
I
draft
feel
circles?
like not particularly high right now. Even in my conversations with UConn fans, like Larry and I watched the Big East final with a very dedicated UConn fan where, I'm just kind of picking his brain a little bit about the team because I was asking about Solo Ball because Solo Ball was a total no-show in the championship game. And then I was asking him about Mullins as well. And he's like, yeah, to be quite honest, Mullins, while a highly touted recruit, is not having the year we expected him to have. And unlike with what you kind of referenced with Cooper Flagg, obviously Flagg was a much greater prospect than Mullins to begin with. But Newman, you mentioned that Flagg struggled in non-conference play. And then once ACC play occurred, you're like, yep, this is the guy that we expected on campus. This is who we have now. It hasn't been the same with Mullins. Big East play has not flipped a switch for him.
Right. So, well, first of all, I would not say Cooper Flagg struggled, but Cooper Flagg was much more inefficient in the non-conference. Whereas, yeah, in conference play, he became the Cooper Flagg that everybody is familiar with now. But no, to your point, you're exactly right. Braylon Mullins, spot up shooter, but I don't have the exact feel of the numbers, but I think he's shooting under 35% from three this year. And again, how much stock do NBA, scouts put into that? I don't know. But when you
Yeah,
come
he's
as a freshman,
shooting
yeah,
he's shooting 31% from three this year. He is a 94% free throw shooter, which is something I know teams look at as like
yeah,
an indicator that that number could go up. But we
right.
have seen like a lot of those, sharpshooters out of college, besides Con Knipple, who's so talented in so many other ways as well, besides being a generational shooter, with guys like Dalton Connect, Grady Dick, like they haven't really translated to the NBA much. Liam McNeely as well, like you mentioned earlier. So that could hurt him, just the way these things trend. I'm also doing a little research on him right now. He's got a weird face. I need my sharpshooter to be handsome. Say what you will about Pacome Dadier, but he's got that going for him at least. Uh, I'd steer clear of him for the Knicks, but it is that type of guy I'm looking at selfishly, just because we are going to be like a late first round team. Guys who are fans of playoff teams who, their teams are taking the foot off the gas right now a little bit. I think those are guys who are important to watch because they actually could contribute to your team in the short term. So I'll keep an eye on them too, but I'm not going to, it's not exactly eye
No,
candy
he looks like he's
guy.
12. Like if that dude walked into any of our classrooms, I'd be like, oh, this dude wouldn't blink twice. Wouldn't be like, huh, he probably shouldn't be here. I'd be like, CT over here, big guy. All right, let's get rolling. Like, all right. But regardless, let's go ahead and move on. Really good conversation about the East region. I know it is the region that we are all most familiar with. Not only does it have two of the top three picks in the upcoming NBA draft, very likely, but obviously we talked about the the coaches. Newman's a Duke fan. I'm a St. John's fan. But we can go ahead and move to the South region. So the South region is one where I ironically feel like there's another 5 seed that I think was a little disrespected by the committee in Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt made it all the way to the SEC tournament final, fell short against Arkansas. The number 1 seed, Florida, in that region, was beaten soundly by Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament semifinal. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that Vanderbilt should have been seeded ahead of Florida, but I do find it interesting that they end up in the same bracket, much like we were discussing in the East region with with the St. John's and a Duke. Newman, I'm going to give you a moment to talk about this because I have a take and I wonder what your call is on this. With Caleb Wilson done for the year, North Carolina is criminally overseeded at 6. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I
Really?
disagree with that. I think Caleb Wilson went down, and they won 5 of their next 6 games. And then I know that was going into the Duke game. They did lose to Duke, but I mean, let's be honest, Duke's superior. And then yeah, they lost to Clemson by 1 point in the ACC. So in that, what do we got? That's a 8-9 game sample size. I just don't see the evidence of Caleb Wilson, the loss of Caleb Wilson, talented though he is. I'm not arguing that. It doesn't seem to sink them the way people are acting as if it is inevitably going to. I just haven't seen that yet. And if we haven't seen it through 9 games, I'm not sure that that's going to be something that we do see.
Fair enough. I respect that. So I'll kind of shift to some of the other questions I was talking with you about a little bit earlier. Do you see an upset in this region? Do you see 12 knocking off 5, 13-4, anything like that? Or do you think this is a little more chalky? Or do you think there's maybe chaos very possible later on?
Yeah. No, I think this region leans chalk. To your point, 5-12 is always a popular upset, and I do see a lot of 12/5 potential scenarios here. I do agree with you that Vandy should have, been better than a 5. Certainly, I know they beat Florida, and I'm not saying that like they should have been seated where Florida is. Nothing remotely like that. But I think Vandy could have been a 4, for sure. Maybe knocking on the door of a 3. So the Vandy McNeese matchup is that's not a 5-12 matchup that I'm looking at.
What about Troy, Nebraska? Nebraska
I
looking for their first tournament win ever. Do you see that coming to fruition? I think I might be making this up, and this might be really, really bad. They're the Troy Trojans, correct? Okay,
They
so
are the Troy
are the
Trojans,
Trojans
absolutely.
going to knock off the Cornhuskers and prevent them from achieving that very first victory?
I think Nebraska's going to bring their first
All
victory
right.
home this year. Yeah, Fred Hoiberg. I'm a big fan of Fred Hoiberg.
I
as
have a
coach.
He coaches Nebraska.
Sure does.
Yeah, he was a good coach.
No, I haven't
Like that
vendetta
guy.
against Hoiberg.
For NBA
No,
reasons?
actually, I was in ninth grade when he was coaching Iowa State, and Iowa State won the Big 12 tournament that particular year, and they were just hot as a pistol. They got seeded at 4, and I was like, no, that's disrespectful. They should be at worst a 3. And I had them going all the way to the Final Four. Like they were like one of the first games of the tournament, and they got knocked off by the 13. Ruined my entire bracket. And Hoiberg was the coach. Newman, I would be astounded if you could. I actually don't even think this is a Division I program anymore. The team that beat them.
The team that beat them in your 9th grade year for Iowa
So
State?
20.
Wait,
What was that 19?
I'm 2 years older than you, you
Something?
idiot.
because if you give me the year, I might be able to
believe
pull this
20
one.
Be
But I do need the
2015
year.
then.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know.
Frank
Like,
the Tank Kaminsky.
wait,
He played in that tournament,
did.
right?
and you're saying they might not be a
They
D1
might
team?
not even be a program anymore in D1, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look at it.
Okay, so if it's the school I'm thinking of here, they are a D1 program. I believe they may have discontinued their D1 status in football.
I think
though.
you're correct. Do they have a sweet mascot?
Yeah, I'd give them that.
If you had to think about it, I don't know. Go ahead.
I think they're better, but is this the University of Alabama at
Yes,
Birmingham?
and they're the Dragons.
I thought they're the
I thought they
Blazers.
were the Dragons. Whatever.
Pretty sure they're the Blazers. UAB Blazers.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna convince myself it's the Dragons. Anyways, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
we
all
can
right.
call them the Dragons.
You are absolutely correct, Newman. It is UAB. That was also the same day that Baylor got knocked off by Georgia State, and RJ Hunter hit that crazy shot. And afterwards, I think it was
Okay.
was Torian Prince? Who was it that like gave that really snarky remark when asked like, how'd you get so brutally beaten on the glass? And like the guy from Ben, who do you know who it is?
It was Torian Prince.
Yeah.
Who did the
He's like a reporter asked him like how they got just out rebounded by this team. He's like, well, you see, when the ball goes off the rim and comes down and you catch it, that's a rebound. And they got more of those today than we did. It was so it was a valid question. Because obviously those bigger schools, Baylor should absolutely just eat Georgia State's lunch. They're bigger, stronger, faster, taller, all that stuff. And it just didn't happen. It was a really valid question and a really disrespectful response. Go ahead, Ben.
University of Alabama at Birmingham. They are the Blazers, but their mascot is Blaze
Okay.
the Dragon, who is known as, quote, fuzzy yet fearsome.
What kind of dragon is fuzzy?
A green fire-breathing one from Birmingham. He was born in
Sure.
1996.
Okay.
He's worn numbers 1 and 45. I can't actually see him breathing fire anywhere. That might be a myth. but it is a pretty cool mascot. I
All
won't
right.
lie to you.
So you know what? I
Okay.
feel a little bit vindicated in that. All right, sounds good. Newman, who do you have coming out of this region? Yeah, Duke coming out of the East, who's coming out of the South.
I got
Okay.
Florida here. Don't the only team, honestly, in this region that I think could contest them is Houston. I'm not sold. They stack the East, and like just mathematically, if you stack one region, inevitably your other regions, at least one of them, are gonna have to be on the weaker side. And outside the Florida Houston top two, none of them really scream Final Four potential. Here, if you go down the line, Illinois, Nebraska, Vandy, like I said, give Vandy credit. I think they were better than a 5 seed, but just yeah, I don't, peek into a crystal ball. I don't see him in the Final Four. So I think it's come down to Florida and Houston, and I just think Houston has some question marks on the
Yeah,
offensive side of the
they're
ball.
they're one of those guys. Kevin Sampson's gonna have those boys locked in on the defensive side, but can they hit shots? Ultimately, last year that's where they fell short against Florida in the national championship game, in a game that they shouldn't have been playing in. Right, Newman?
You're absolutely right. But even while they were 1,000% a defensive-minded club last year, uh, and still are this year, this year's Houston defense is not as good as last year's Houston defense. When you're a defensive-minded team, you need to have a couple of scores, and the couple of scores you do have a disproportionate effect on your overall team. And I think the loss of LJ Cryer to the NBA from Houston, it is a loss that they have not been able to fill.
The Knicks played against LJ Cryer the other night.
Yeah, I was about to
What was it,
say.
Ben? Was it for the Pacers or for the Warriors that he got minutes for?
I think he
I
was
think
on the Warriors. It was like one of his first like actual NBA games of the year. He's been doing G
Yeah, the
League
Warriors had
time.
like everyone and their mother out, and this guy got minutes. So
Well, he's the leading scorer in Houston last year, so
that makes sense. Who's their 3-point sniper? He was on the team last year. I forget his Sharp. Sharp. Daniel Sharp.
yeah,
Okay,
Emmanuel
I
Sharp.
like that guy. He's cool. All right. Um,
He's a sharp
he's a little
shooter.
chubby too, which makes him cooler. All righty.
That is cool.
Wait, he's a sharpshooter. How's his face?
Is
Is he fit the
that,
part?
that, that, that
Yeah, give me the name again.
Emmanuel with an
Emmanuel
I
Sharp.
or an E? I feel like it's an E. It's an E. Yeah,
It's an
no,
E.
no Emmanuel quickly kind of style here. Is Emmanuel Sharp?
Oh, I like him.
Okay.
He's got a little big spoon energy going to him. So I would trust that guy to hit a clutch shot. Which leads me to my question here. Filled out my bracket. It's not finalized. Mainly on vibes as I normally do. I have Houston winning the tournament. Is that a possibility? I know they're not like favorites to do it, but is that
Yeah.
so stupid that I should change it?
No, not at all. Not at all. Houston, their bread and butter is making games ugly, turn them into rock fights. And as the saying goes, I don't know if this is true in the NBA, but I know in college basketball, it's a whole lot easier to make a game ugly than it is to make a game pretty. And if they can just like neutralize any talent or skill deficiencies they have compared to an opponent just by making it ugly, Kelvin Sampson's made a career out of that almost. And no, yeah, that it's in them. Their ceiling is to win it, yes.
All right, cool. And then my second question, same as that East portion of the bracket. Any NBA guys I should be looking at here?
So yeah, you might. I don't know, Pags, how familiar you would be with this. But the first name that comes to mind, I don't know where he ranks as a prospect, but I really, really, really love Duke Miles. Not because his name is Duke, but Duke Miles for Vandy. I think he's just a consummate gamer. He's very, very, very athletic. He's probably a combo guard, and maybe if not more of the point. I don't know where he might be on draft boards, but he is a senior. He has no more eligibility left. He's a guy that I think could be a viable player at the
Yeah, I
next
mean,
level.
the biggest name outside of Caleb Wilson, who obviously we already touched upon, is not going to be a factor in this tournament as he's out for the year, is Kingston Flemings, point guard out of Houston. He's projected in a recent mock draft right
Mm.
now to go as high as 5 to the Utah Jazz. Right now, it seems like those top 3 are solidified. I don't want to call Caleb Wilson solidified at 4, but I feel like he's got the inside track to 4 right now. But Flemings is there. You got Keaton. Did I pronounce that name right, or is it Vogler? Like, I think it's Wagler. Keaton Wagler, a point guard slash shooting guard, so a little combo guard from Illinois. So those are 2 of the bigger names that you can take a peek at in that particular region. I'm going through it. Thomas Huff. Did I pronounce that right? I think so. From Florida, he could go as well.
I've seen in some mocks, kind of in that late first round range, early second for teams like the Knicks. And I think the Knicks actually were projected to take him in this mock. Alex Condon, the Florida big. Does he have like any like Kalkbrenner type potential to him as like a backup NBA big who can give you good minutes as a rookie? Or do you think that might not necessarily translate the way he plays?
Newman, I feel like you've watched more SEC ball than I have. What do you think about? You familiar with Ryan Kalkbrenner?
I saw he and his Florida team destroy my South Carolina Gamecocks twice this year. So yeah. So what really stands out about him is that he actually has like great vision, court vision for a big man. It's not
Hmm.
just like get it on the low block and go to work and look to score first. I mean, he does look to score, but they kind of go like inside out, throw the ball in, kick it back out, in and out. Think of like Florida. I don't know the best way to describe it. They almost like surround the perimeter and like look for your weaknesses and just like the quick dish in and back out to try to attack you however they can. So I guess I say all that to say that like he's not your traditional big man when I watch him play in the sense that he's just gonna put up, you know, buckets and boards, so to speak. He's a little bit more well rounded than you might think of like of a post player, but yeah, I see him getting an NBA look for sure.
A little like short roll, pass out of the short roll potential. That's always a skill set teams are looking
Especially in
for.
NBA.
All right, cool. I'll keep my eye on him.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and shift to the West region. My humble opinion, I think the West region has.
Wait. One last thing on the South. Sorry.
Okay.
So sorry. The fraudulent UMBC Golden Retrievers or whatever they are looking like they will not be making the tournament.
Yeah.
They're getting punked on by Howard right now. Those guys should not be in this spot. They got a little hot shooting stretch. But I will say I've watched more UMBC basketball than any other team in the entire tournament this year. And I'm confident to say that they do not deserve to be there, and it looks like they won't make it into the
I mean,
64.
you could have said the same thing after 2019, after the Marquise tournament in 19, and they proved that they had a right to be there. So we don't know.
Or I mean, maybe Howard's looking good. Howard, led by former Duke point guard Kenny Blakeney,
The more you know. I wouldn't have ever guessed that.
right?
Okay, now let's go ahead and shift to the West. The West has, in my humble opinion, the team that is currently playing the best ball in the country right now. That is the Wildcats out of Arizona, Big 12 tournament champions. The Big 12. Newman, I know your opinions about the SEC being the best conference. I think Big 12 had the most top heavy, like, just big guns at the top. So I just think, them being the champions of that, Arizona, that is, I just think they are incredible. It's funny. I usually like to pick at least one 5-12 upset, but looking at this, I think Wisconsin, I'm not going to call them underseeded, but I think Wisconsin is a phenomenal, phenomenal team. I am really, really big fans of all the fives that I've seen so far. Arkansas as well, the SEC tournament champions. I'm looking, even BYU has name brands with AJ Debasa. Gonzaga, they've underwhelmed me a little bit this year. And even Purdue, now the Big Ten champions. So you're looking at three different big time conference champions. I'm not counting Gonzaga in that. I'm counting Purdue, Arkansas, and Arizona in this region. So I will stand by that, the East is the region of death, but this one's nothing to slouch at either. Newman, what are your takeaways just looking at this bracket, maybe possible upsets? Any team that you might have thought was seated too high or too low? Really, really open-ended question. What sticks out to you about this West region?
Yeah, awesome. And honestly, this is it sounds kind of like weird to say, but this is like kind of my favorite region, just for like a lot of the teams and storylines there. I definitely agree with you on a lot of the takes that you just articulated. I certainly disagree with a lot of the takes you just articulated as well. Uh, just going down the list here, absolutely undeniable about Arizona. I mean, maybe I'm jumping the gun here, and you can be upset with me about this, but Arizona's my pick to win it all. I'll say that right now. They're the only top team that looked exactly like a top team throughout their conference tourney. So I'll certainly give you that. In terms of underseeded teams, Utah State on the 9 line, I think they could have been a 7. I think I wouldn't have lost my mind if they were a 6.
Really?
I think they were the criminally underseeded team really in this entire tournament. And, if Utah State wasn't paired with Arizona potentially in the second round, I might entertain having them defeat a 1 seed, to be honest. I think that's the team to look out for. Now, a take I certainly do disagree with is actually I love the potential upset of High Point over
I just think
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
I
Wisconsin has some of the
think
best wins in the country this year.
absolutely High Point averages 90 points a game, and Wisconsin ranks something like 230th in defense. So if you're going to put that offensive attack High Point has against some questionable defense that Wisconsin's played this season, yeah, I would, if I'm looking for a 12 over 5, which first of all, I do think it's a common mistake people make is they pick a 12 over 5 because they feel like they have to. And I know the historical trends say what they say, but you have to be the own filler of your bracket. If you look at the 12s and the 5s and you don't see a 12 matching up well with a 5, don't feel pressured to pick one. You know, don't pick a 12 just to pick a 12. Pick a 12 because you think they match up well or you saw something or whatever, right? So I guess I'm saying that to say when I identify High Point over Wisconsin as a potential upset, I'm not just saying it just to pick a 12. I'm saying that because I see something at High Point and I see something in Wisconsin where they could absolutely give them trouble. So I think that is an upset to be had there. Going down the list, Arkansas, somehow we haven't mentioned his name yet because he's one of the best players in the country. He's the best player in the SEC. Is Darius
Ridiculous.
Acuff.
Ridiculous.
And some people, absolutely. Kendrick Perkins, I don't know how we feel about Kendrick Perkins. I kind of mixed about him as well. But he
He's
has
pretty
said,
tall.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah, right? You know, wide too. He has actually said that Darius Acuff might be, and this might sound crazy, he has said Darius Acuff might be the best guard John Calipari has coached.
That's, I feel like an egregious statement, but
He said that on the air, and whoever he was, I forget his name, he's talking to somebody on ESPN, and the guy on ESPN, like, this was pre-SEC title game. He pushed back on Kendrick Perkins when he said that, and then he came on the next day and he goes, like on live TV, he's like, I want to apologize to Kendrick Perkins. I saw him play in the SEC tournament. Kendrick Perkins might be right about that.
I don't know that I can put him above John Wall.
No. I'm not saying I do either, but I'm saying now that it's more than just a one-off of somebody saying very, very, very high praise
Yeah,
to
no,
Darius Acuff.
he's ridiculous. He's such a fun watch. They're one of the reasons. And honestly, Newman, you said this about Utah State. Talking about how if they hadn't run into Arizona in the second round, you might have them making a nice little run in this tournament. Not that a Sweet 16 is anything to scoff at, but I'd probably have Arkansas being an Elite 8 flirting with a Final Four if they weren't running into Arizona in the Sweet 16,
There you
quite
go.
frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a perfectly valid take for sure. And then also, you know, Purdue, I do have a couple of things to say about Purdue because they get treated like an afterthought almost. And when they beat Michigan in the Big Ten final, people seem to only want to approach it from the angle of Michigan lost, what's wrong with Michigan, all those sort of things. And those are valid questions, but people really forget Purdue was the preseason number one
Yep.
team this year.
They have senior Braden Smith running the show over there. They have another 7-foot something guy that I forget his name. They seem to breed those kind of guys over in Purdue. It's a strange thing. They just cycle them in. It was that guy Harms. It was Edie. I think there was even another dude before that. There's always somebody there that is just like, whoa, you're not 7 foot. You're 7'3".
Is Braden Smith like kind of like the Amish looking guy, like that beard, like kind of, you know what I'm talking about? Would that be an accurate description?
Yeah. No, that's a really great way to put it.
Because he was a dog in the tournament last year. I kind of thought he had graduated. They went pretty far last year, no?
Yeah,
Oh, they go Sweet
the
16.
the year prior they went to the final and lost 75-60 or 75-59 to UConn.
Yeah, with
Yeah, with
Edie.
Edie. You know, there's something to be said
Yeah.
though.
They lost to Houston last year in a tight one.
Gotcha. There's
Yeah,
something to be
that's right.
said about the impact that being battle tested has to do in the tournament. We don't see this come to fruition every single year. Sometimes we do see the one and done darlings. Kentucky back in 2012 with Calipari. They should have done it again in 15, but they fell short. But even that year, Duke won it, and they had the one and done darling in Jahlil Okafor and Tyus Jones. Justice Winslow as well. I think some years experience really, really plays a part in this, and those Purdue seniors have really been through it all. Their freshman year, they were part of that team that was upset by Fairleigh Dickinson University. Then they go on, ultimate redemption story, get back to face UConn in the finals, lose that. Then last year they fall in the Sweet 16 as we just established. So I really think that if you want to talk about a team that's battle tested, Purdue's one of those top options in the country. If that's how you like to fill out your bracket, you want to see a team that has that proper motivation. Those Purdue seniors have about as much motivation as you can possibly fathom.
Absolutely. And not for nothing, it's just like going to be a historical footnote, but in their first round game against Queens, that I don't think anybody thinks they're going to have trouble with. Braden Smith, I believe, is 2 assists shy of becoming the all time NCAA leader in the category, about to break Bobby Hurley's
That's
record.
awesome. That's great. I learned Queens, not New York, North
North
Carolina.
Carolina.
For a second, like when Larry and I were watching the selection show, or we were on the phone together during it, and we were watching them fill out this bracket. We saw Long Island in the 16, Queens in the 15. We naturally assumed they were referencing Queens, New York, and I boldly proclaimed it's going to be Long Island versus Queens for the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four, which theoretically
Over Arizona and
absolutely.
Purdue.
Which theoretically still could happen, but it doesn't have the same kick now that it's not New York versus New York, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it's in Charlotte, North Carolina, because Charlotte's the Queen City. But I mean, I don't know, Charlotte and New York, 2 American Airlines
You know
hubs.
what? That's enough for me. I just need a storyline. That's about as much as I needed. And Newman, you already said, so I'm not even going to bother asking, who you have coming out of this region. You obviously referenced Arizona as your victor. Who do you have them taking down in the Elite Eight? Is it Purdue or is it another surprise team that makes a little bit of run? Possibly the Zags. We haven't even really brought them up. Not that I think they're a little underwhelming this year, but
No, Gonzaga underwhelms me just like they do for you. I got them over Purdue. I think Purdue is actually an underrated team, and which feels weird to say about someone on the 2 line that nobody was arguing should be a 1, but in spite of all that, I do find them somewhat underrated. So I got them
sounds
going to
good.
the
Ben,
Elite
you
Eight.
have anything to add to this region?
It just kind of taps into one guy in this region. And lining up with a few guys in the past two we've talked about. I'm looking at a lot of mock drafts, and I'm seeing three, basically point guards going back to back to back. Darius Acuff, who was mentioned, who I've watched his highlights. That dude is shifty. Keaton Wagler, however you say that, and Kingston Flemings from Houston. Out of those three guys, based, I guess, more on your college perspective of it, Newman, and your NBA perspective, Ben. Who would you say, like, if I'm a team drafting, I'm a team like Atlanta, who's got a point guard deficit, Memphis, they let go of Ja, Chicago, Utah, they just don't really have much of anything. If you're one of those teams and you have those three guys on the board, who would you feel most confident taking in to kind of lead your franchise for the next five at
Newman,
least years?
Darius Acuff, and I don't hesitate.
yeah. Yeah, I know I should probably, for the sake of the pod, I should probably zig while Newman zags, but I mean, I'm gonna take the guy that has proven it. I think sometimes NBA GMs try to get too cute as opposed to just going with the guy who was a flat out baller in college. I mean, Jalen Brunson might be the best example of that. National Player of the Year, and I know he's not particularly athletic and he's a little chunky, and so he dropped to pick, I believe, 33 or something like that. Now he's a top 10 player in the NBA. It's just I think sometimes NBA GMs get too cute with it. And when you have guys, Ben, you just reference them going back to back to back. Give me the guy that just produces at an incredibly high level, like Darius Acuff.
And also, in my opinion, the SEC is the best conference in basketball. And if you don't want to say it's the best, you at least have to acknowledge the SEC is the deepest in terms of quality depth in college basketball. Darius Acuff led the best conference in basketball, in my opinion, in both points and assists
That's
As a freshman.
as a freshman for the conference champion. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty sick. You said NBA GM, and it kind of sounded like you said NBA Jam. It just got me thinking about if Dallas were to take Acuff, he gets to learn under Kyrie for a couple years, and then you have an Acuff flag duo. Would be elite for NBA Jam and probably for NBA as well.
Where's I mean, I know they have to have the lottery, but like let's say the lottery holds and like exactly how it should. The worst record gets 1, 2. Where's Dallas there? Because
There's seven. There's seven,
Okay.
but they can move,
Yeah.
as high up as 4. Like most mock drafts, they have like, Debansa, Peterson, Boozer in some sort of order. Most people have Wilson at 4, and then after that, it's like those 3 point guards in whatever order you prefer
Yeah.
as kind of your top guys.
So if Dallas gets the 5th or maybe even the 6th, they could get Acuff. And then to your point, if they pair Acuff with Flag, Acuff and Flag are actually the same age because Flag reclassified. So like that would be just extraordinary.
Yeah, this is famously one of the best drafts in a while. And then next year, and I think the year after too, are supposed to be pretty subpar. So teams
Okay.
are really looking to get into this draft.
Okay. Makes sense.
Let's go ahead
Would.
and shift to the final region. We're of course looking at the Midwest region. A team that, you know what, if Michigan has no haters this particular season, then I have ceased to exist. Just every single time I watch that team in a big moment, they underwhelm me. Every single time, whether it was that insane weekend that saw Arizona face Houston and Duke face Michigan in the same day, whether it was even in the Big Ten semifinal that I guess to Michigan's credit, they ultimately ended up winning. They blew a 15-point second half lead to Wisconsin, and then ultimately Yexel Lendenberg hit a fantastic three-pointer with about zero point 0.3 seconds left in order to win that game for them. And then they underwhelm against Purdue in the final the next day. I am consistently underwhelmed by this team, and yeah, I don't want to go as far as saying I hate them. What did Mikal Bridges just do? Did he just hurt himself? That doesn't happen to Mikal Bridges. No, like seriously, he's never missed a game in high school, college. Oh, he's fine. Okay, he's running back. Yep, he regenerated the limbs. Okay. Anyways, actually, I
There we
should say
go.
the tendons, the ligaments. That's strange. Anyways, sorry guys. Newman, this happens often. When we get this deep into the pod, I throw the Knicks on.
Dude, we had a podcast the other week where Ben just tapped out. The game did not even matter. And we were talking, I'd be like, Ben. And he's just staring at the screen. He compared Jarrett Allen to Tim Duncan. Was it was quite the
It was,
episode.
in my defense, it was Jared Allen to David Robinson.
Like at what? Because it's not basketball that you're comparing them to.
It was so we were doing an exercise where brief side note, we were doing an exercise where we were going through the big time NBA contenders to which we believe there are 9 teams. Actually, I think it's 8 that can win a championship this year. And Ben did a great job leading the segment where he pointed out, listen, you got to be able to identify an archetype that can tell you this team is built like XYZ so they can win it. I mean, obviously the Thunder are easy. They won it last year. That's their archetype. The Nuggets won it a few years ago. That's their archetype. But you have to get creative with some teams that hadn't already won it. And when it came to the Cleveland Cavaliers, I was thinking about how they go double big with Mobley and Allen, and then they have 2 very strong guards in Mitchell and Mobley. So I compared them to the '03 Spurs that had 2 very strong lead guards, and then 2.
You compare them to the
That was a
'99
mistake.
Spurs. You compare them to Tim Duncan
It
and
was a
David
mistake
Robinson
initially,
in the
and I
'99
corrected the
Spurs.
mistake because I realized that my comparison to the '99 didn't have Parker or Ginobili, so it wasn't a very good comparison. Then I reshifted to the '03, and I emphasized so many times, I am not saying Jared Allen is David Robinson. Ethan couldn't fathom this though. So we struggled, and I definitely wasn't on my A game, so there was, a few not so great things. Uh, but yeah, so that was the situation.
We got heated that episode. If you watch the video version of it, you can see some great facial expressions throughout. Ethan's jaw like hit the floor when he when he went with that comparison.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so
It
funny.
was a poor job on a lot of people's parts. I'll own my part of it. Okay.
I see your
Yep.
point
All
though.
right, let's go ahead and shift our way back, of course, to the Midwest region where I was talking about my disdain for Michigan. Newman, I feel like you totally disagree with that, and that's okay. We're open to debate here. So talk to me about your thoughts on Michigan, because you, I believe, have touted them. This was prior to the Big Ten championship game. I will give that caveat, but you touted them as having the best resume in college basketball. Talk to me a little bit about that.
And Pags, you know what? As of right now, they do have the best resume in basketball. After everything, all right? Now, when I say they have the best resume, that's when you look at the season as a whole, where what you do in November and December has equal weight to February and March. I'm not saying it should be, and I'm certainly not saying that's how this tournament is going to play out, right? But I'm just saying when you take a 30,000-foot view of the season and all things are equal, they do have the best resume. They do. Now, I cannot deny they're not playing their best basketball right now. In the non-conference, and honestly, through the end of January to mid-February, Michigan was blowing teams out. Michigan at one point, actually before their game against Duke, they were 25-1, and that one was a 3-point loss to Wisconsin, a team that you are very high on, Pags. And you look at and when I say blowout, even that's not doing it justice. They were beating ranked teams by 30 and 40 points. I'm not even exaggerating, right? And that team is still in there somewhere. They did lose one player, but it was like their seventh player. Not a guy who's really, in their starting lineup. Yeah. Did they maybe peak in January or whatever? As of right now, maybe it looks like they did. But, you know, they can make a run in March and April just like Arizona or Duke or anybody else can. That team does still exist. They didn't go
Here,
anywhere. So I do see that. And that's why I got them going to the Final Four.
you have all one seeds. I mean,
And
it happened last year.
it happened last year. And didn't I said not 10 minutes ago, don't pick an upset
You
just to
did.
pick an upset.
I'm just saying. I was clarifying.
Yeah. I mean, I have upsets in my bracket, just
Yeah,
not on the one
that's
line.
it's a fact.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, when it comes to Michigan, I know they're a pretty big team, but I mean, my motto it doesn't really matter. It's just how you use it. I'm that doesn't convince me on them. Like Ben said, I think they're a little fraudulent, and that brings me to the 2 seed, in this bracket, Iowa State. Newman, are they going to do better or worse than their female equivalent, led by Audi Crooks?
Okay, great pull. But I'm gonna go. I mean, no disrespect to Audie Crook. She's a top 5 player in the country. Right? I mean, and you put like 25 and 8 a game on nearly 70% shooting, right? Absolutely. But the Iowa State women are like a 6 seed. So I'm gonna go with the men outperforming their female counterparts.
Yeah, Audi Crooks is my favorite player in college basketball, though, without a doubt. She's
Okay.
Showtime.
Okay.
She is phenomenal to watch.
Okay. Now, if you want to compare someone to Tim Duncan, you could
There
go
we
Audie
go.
Crooks.
All right.
I like that one.
Actually,
Yeah.
not really. She's more of a standard
More
5.
Shaq,
Yeah.
more of a Shaq.
Uh, a less dynamic Shaq.
Yeah, like Miami Heat Shaq.
There you
Boston
go.
Celtics
We'll
shot.
say that.
Newman, two teams I want to touch upon are, if there's this is the region of question marks to me, not only because of my personal feelings on Michigan, but also you look at kind of, the 4 and the 5 seed. Texas Tech, the 5 seed, lost one of their best players, JT Toppin, for the entire season. Lost him about a month ago, so it's
Yep.
not like it's recent.
Yep.
With that being said, the 4 seed Alabama just lost Holloway, their second leading scorer, arrested on drug charges, removed from the team, removed from campus. Newman, can you
There
talk
you
a little
go.
bit about how, a little Grand Theft Alvarado there? Can you talk a little bit about how those absences are going to influence this bracket and how it might shake down?
Absolutely. And those are very big time absences. And this regional, honestly, I have more upsets in than others. And those are a couple of them. I think Texas Tech has more reason to be nervous than Alabama does, only because the Nate Oates system is an offensive system like no other, where like it's not literally plug and play, but how he teaches offense, you can lose one of your big contributors and you got somebody else on the bench who is adept enough at that to be able to be an adequate replacement. Also, it's Hofstra. So now the 5-12, that's another upset that I would be on the lookout for. Partly because Texas Tech lost Toppin, like you said, but also this Akron team is actually very, very, very underrated. I said to people, and obviously a big storyline coming into this tournament is what to do with Miami of Ohio because they were like 31 and all right, even though they didn't play anybody. And I was actually, you could say adamant. Miami of Ohio was not even the best team in their conference. I said that even before their conference tournament began because I thought that it was Akron. Miami of Ohio and Akron did play each other. Miami of Ohio did win by 3 points, I believe it was. That was Akron's only conference loss
Gotcha.
of the season, to include their conference tournament because they won the conference tournament too. So all these people talking about Miami of Ohio coming out of the MAC and what to do with them, that was a valid discussion. But I think the best team in that conference, even before Miami of Ohio lost, was the Akron Zips.
Sounds good. All right. I mean, I love it, honestly. I feel bad for Texas Tech, and they didn't totally melt down without Toppin, but obviously, you remove what is realistically a top probably 50 player in the country college basketball wise. Is that a fair place to put him? He's probably not top 20, but I think top 50 is very fair, right? Yeah. When you
At the
when you lose
least,
a guy like
yes.
that, it's going to be a challenge. But I thought they did recover pretty well. But yeah, I mean, when you get to the NCAA tournament, your weaknesses can really be exposed. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be a situation where their weaknesses are exposed. Ben?
I agree.
You briefly mentioned Hofstra. When I was in 8th grade, I lived in a very small town. I'm like my high school, we had like 60 kids in a grade. My small town's version of Cooper Flag actually went to Hofstra. I'm sure he's graduated by now. So it's kind of insane seeing them on this bracket. They're getting bounced, I'm assuming, right? They don't have much juice to them because that's a small program.
Yeah, yeah. I think you can make that assumption.
All right. If they don't get bounced, you're not going to be back on the podcast, but we're going to make Ethan do something for you as a surrogate punishment. All right.
Okay. If Hofstra
So
doesn't get bounced, sure, Ethan can
if
accept the
Foster doesn't
punishment.
get bounced, Ethan has to. Ooh, Ethan's deep in a cut right now. We're eating it. We're making him eat 12 donuts on the podcast. We're going to break him psychologically.
All right.
Newman, question: is the babka gonna be ready to roll for Friday?
It's not in my possession because they make them fresh on Fridays, but my plan right now is Friday morning drive to that farm
Okay,
stand and acquire
thank you,
one.
because that is it's one of the greatest things I've ever tasted in my entire life. It was so magical. Yeah,
Love hearing that. That's
it
fantastic.
truly was phenomenal. Ben, if you've never had babka bread, you have to have it. It's magical.
I heard it was one of the best things you've tasted in your
Absolutely
life.
was. It
It was
was. It
magical.
was.
It's a great
I
sentence out of
stand
you.
10 toes down on that.
All right. So, Newman, you have all one seeds in the Final Four. You have Arizona winning. Who
Yeah.
do you have them beating in the championship?
I got Arizona over Duke.
Arizona.
All right. And this kind of leads me to my final question because last year it was chalk. This year you're leaning towards it going chalk again. Is this a trend we're going to keep on seeing? Is there a reason for this? Does this have to do with like the transfer portal? Why is everything so much chalkier now than it used to be?
Great
Yeah, I think
question.
there's a huge reason for that. And actually, in this last region, I didn't get to it. I do see these 6-seeded Tennessee Volunteers making a run and making some noise. I got them obviously beating the 11 seed that they're going to face. That's one of the winners of the playing games. I got them beating Virginia, the 3rd seed Virginia in the round of 32. I got them beating 2nd seeded Iowa State before ultimately falling in the Elite 8 to Michigan. So throw that out there. And then also, yeah, no, this transfer portal is absolutely it. You know, schools with the deeper pockets get the players because players can go anywhere. I can name you 3 examples off the top of my head, and I'm sure there are others, of guys who have spent their 4 years in college with 4 different programs. And I was watching, I think it was Seth Greenberg on ESPN, you know, former coach, and he's still got a lot of ties within the coaching community. And he said on ESPN that lower level college coaches, their recruiting pitches to kids are actually, they'll say something along the lines of, come with me for a year and I'll get you to a Power 5 program.
Interesting.
Like, they're not even
Yeah.
being shy about it, right? These lower level teams, you know, it used to be, you know, if a University of Vermont or, you know, like a Stony Brook or something like that, if they had like a class that came together in as freshmen and they learned and built a system over the course of 4 years, you know, their senior year, they'd get into the tournament and upset some people. That's just not how it's going anymore. You know, guys are using these programs as a stopgap measure to get to another program. And then they get to another program and they leave after 1 year. And there's just no cohesiveness. You know, programs don't build identities and build cultures anymore. It's like glorified AAU basketball, and I hate to say it because it's still the greatest postseason in sports. You know, but even when I watch, you know, it used to be, you know, Duke and Kentucky got all these one and dones because there's the NBA one and done stuff. But now everybody's one and done. Coaches have to re-recruit their entire roster. You know, and principles of a motion offense. If you want to run a unique offense, you need more than a year to build that. So coaches, you know, don't have time to invest 4 years of teaching. They have 10 months of teaching right before guys, theoretically, and oftentimes do, leave. I watch the South Carolina Gamecocks because that's my alma mater. And every year, the first month of the season in November, I spend all November saying, all right, who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's that guy? Before I get to know him. You know, how do you build a program identity like that? I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows, frankly. But that's
Yeah.
just the reality we live in.
I mean, even like those small teams like UVM, like half of our roster this year was guys coming from other programs. Like you're not. I think
Sure.
we had the big guy.
Gus Felt.
I'm blanking on his name. Noah. No, not, Gus came in as a transfer, but
Barnett?
the big center who
Barnett?
started over him. Yeah, Noah Barnett was like really feel like the only guy in our rotation. Him and TJ Hurley, who were, you know, at UVM since they were freshmen, and that's school with like zero sports funding compared to like those big programs. So it is pretty wild. It's definitely a different vibe. I don't know. I mean, it's not going
I
to
mean,
go
and
back. So
you're
just
even
kind of is
seeing
what it is.
legendary coaches like, leave, and while they won't quote it specifically, part of that reasoning is definitely because of the transfer portal. I'm not suggesting Coach K was part of that, but it wouldn't shock me if that played a small part in his decision to retire. Roy Williams kind of being in the same category, with Coach K. Yeah,
Jim
Jim
Boeheim.
Boeheim as well. Tony Bennett, national championship winning coach out of Virginia, is probably maybe the most prominent example where he kind of directly alluded to it, where it's like it's not my kind of game anymore, quite frankly.
And honestly, it's not even just basketball. Nick Saban articulated that when he stepped away from Alabama, because if you remember his last season, they lost in
To
the
Michigan.
semis of the semifinals to Michigan, and I'm not going to say they blew a big lead, but Alabama had a lead that they squandered late in the game. And Nick Saban said something to the effect of afterwards, he's like crushed getting over the loss. And in his exit meetings with players, 90% of them just wanted to know, all right, how much money am I going to get next year? Like they weren't even thinking about the loss anymore. And he's like,
Yeah,
this is not for me.
it's crazy when you get to that point where you have to say that this is not for me. But yeah, no, that's it's a pretty accurate way, depressing way, but the accurate way to look at it at this particular point. Guys, do we have anything else on? Actually, I have one final question. Newman, who's the most outstanding player for Arizona?
Ooh, all right. So you saying like who will be named like the Final
Correct.
Four
Yes.
MOP? Okay. So the easy answer would be Bradley Burris, right? I'm not going to go there only because the best player on a team going into the tournament oftentimes is not the one that wins MOP for the team that wins, you know? So I'm just going to throw out a wild card and I'm going to go Jaden
Okay.
Bradley on that one.
Sounds good.
I think guard play can be the difference maker, and he's bringing up the ball. So yeah, it'll be my dark horse pick there,
That's
Jaden
good.
Bradley.
All right. Ben, anything else? Newman, anything else? Or can we move on to a little bit of World Baseball Classic? We're already over an hour, so we'll keep it short, but we can talk about it a little bit. We can preview United States. Well, actually, it wouldn't make sense to preview United States Venezuela if people are going to listen to this Thursday morning. So we can just talk.
Yeah, I think just kind of talking about the tournament as a whole, for lack of a better term, is it's just been pretty
Yes, it's been done.
sick. Like it's my first World Baseball Classic. Newman, I love baseball. It is my second favorite sport behind basketball, but
Okay.
I've been watching for 2 years. My biggest regret in life is that I didn't play baseball as a child.
Yeah.
I'd be I'd be dicing guys up in the bottom of the ninth for some MLB team right now on the mound. I got the body for it for sure. I could have gone pro if I ever played, and I love watching it. I don't know. It's a very different game than basketball, obviously. I love just like every play is just like a mini chess match. And every time I watch a baseball game, I kind of just fall more in love with it. And this tournament has amplified that to like the nth degree. The atmospheres at these games are awesome. Obviously, they're being played in like the US, but it's right at the bottom. So when you have teams like the DR and Venezuela, like they're having a much greater crowd presence. I'm sure in tonight's game, Venezuela will have that home field advantage going. I mean, all these games have just been coming down to the wire. You got big hits, big plays in the outfield. You got controversial calls. Like every guy is doing something cool. It's really sick that 90% of the best players want to play in this thing and seem to have, a lot of passion and care about it. You got like the Italians with their espressos, like everyone's has their own little gimmick. And it's just, I don't know. It's been a very fun tournament. Like I mentioned to you earlier, I'm teaching at an international school in Guatemala. So I have about, two or three Venezuelan kids in like each of my classes. And they're talking mad trash to me today about the game tonight. They're talking about Acuna and how, you got Nolan McLean on the mound. Like we're going to just be hitting that ball all over the field. So like, in terms of baseball as like a global game, like kids around the world are watching this. They're invested in it. Like it's a very cool thing to see. It's got to be a big success for baseball. And I know it hasn't been like the most regular thing, like in terms of timing and stuff throughout history. But if they can really get this classic as like every 3 years or whatever, and like you have teams that are getting more and more star players involved, like this is up there. Like this has been my favorite sporting event to watch this year over the Super Bowl. Like this has been, it's been pretty awesome.
And I mean, the Super Bowl sucked, and WBC's been awesome, and this is on the heels of one of the best World Series that we've
Mhm.
ever witnessed.
But yeah.
Between the Dodgers and Blue Jays. And I mean, yeah, it's great. I actually remember after the 2017 World Baseball Classic, Team USA was like they were like hit and miss on getting a lot of their best players to join for, that iteration of the event. And I remember the guys that they did get to do the 2017 one, they went back to their spring trainings and talked to all their teammates about how what a great experience it was. And everybody and like Mike Trout and Clayton Kershaw were not in the 2017 one. And they were like, oh man, from what I've heard from the guys that were there, it was amazing. I'm definitely gonna do the next one. But then of course COVID hits and the next one doesn't happen when the next one was supposed to happen, you know? So as good as this WBC has been, it would have been just as good 5 years ago. Like, right now, we should be talking about the second consecutive phenomenal WBC,
I have a
right?
question.
So
Is there a world,
yeah.
and it's unlikely that this in and of itself happens, but is there a world tonight where um the United States blows out Venezuela and we get to see Clayton Kershaw pitch like a setup eighth inning as one final go?
Oh, man, it's not where I thought you were going with my
I doubt
question.
it.
Yeah, one of the things that I kinda live by in the sports realm is you can't predict baseball. You go to the game you go to the ballpark every day, you'll see something you've never seen before, and I was really about to respond in kind like that, and then you throw out that scenario, and I'm gonna say there's no world.
Sounds good.
Well, I mean, it feels like the USA, as talented as they are, have kind of like stumbled their way through this tournament. I don't think the
Yeah.
talent has like meshed and congealed as well as you would like it to. Whereas Venezuela is just, they don't, I mean, they're a pretty talented team, but not to the United States' level. But just the way they mesh, like they're playing like a baseball team. And I feel like at this point in the tournament, I think the USA got, you know, a mix of luck against the DR. And then, of course, they had Paul Skeens on the mound with the pitching situation tonight. I know Bednar might not be going. I know Whitlock might not be going. So your bullpen's a little more shallow. I'm having a hard time seeing Venezuela not putting up runs on the board tonight. And the U.S. is going to have to match it. I would be very shocked if the U.S. won in like a blowout fashion.
I mean, that's fair. I guess the flip side of the coin is the USA actually had a day of rest yesterday, whereas Venezuela played. So anybody who
Yeah.
pitched yesterday
What's
for
the deal with
Venezuela,
that?
that's just how they scheduled it. They just wanted 2 games per day when it got to the knockout stage, so teams had to play on different days.
First, the umpire at the bottom of the ninth, then the scheduling. You had a
Which,
fraudulent USA run.
well, yeah. So I mean, that pitch was probably a ball. I've seen more egregious calls, and don't leave it in the hands of the ump.
Yeah, that's very true. I know I'm off of social media, so I haven't seen the reaction to it in the past however many hours, but I'm sure just the nature of Twitter and whatnot, that was something people were in their feelings about some way or another.
Right. And then on the flip side, Venezuela has Eduardo Rodriguez on the mound, who, if this was 2019, that would be a formidable pitcher. And he's still decent. I'm not saying he's anything to sneeze at, but like it's not like it's Nolan McLean going against some like bona fide ace.
Mhm.
So there are reasonable questions about the US pitching staff today, but I think you can turn those questions around and direct them to Venezuela just as much.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, Hi, buddy. My cat is very hungry. It's dinner time. I don't know, Ben, do you have any thoughts on the World Baseball Classic, or is this about the ending of where we're
I
at
mean,
here?
you guys summed it up pretty well. I'll be intrigued to tune in tonight. It's funny. I kind of compare the United States run in this WBC to almost their Olympic hockey run, where Canada would be more representative of the DR, even though obviously the United States didn't face the DR in the finals. Same score, same final score, by the way, 2-1, where you can very much argue that the Dominican, if this was a 7-game series, the Dominican wins it probably in 5 or 6. The same would very likely be true of the United States versus Canada in hockey. But that's the beauty of this kind of tournament. It's, one and done. Anything can happen. What is that saying, Newman? You know it better than I do, but it's like averages hold up over the course of a season, but one game, one pitch, one at bat, one whatever, throw all those averages out the window. It's one guy against another head to head, and let's see how it shakes down. I feel like that's helped the United States big time against the DR, and hopefully it works in our favor again tonight against.
Yeah, at 100%. Also, would do just have to say if they played a series against the DR is not winning in 5. The DR might win, the DR is not
Yeah,
winning in 5.
fair enough. Yeah, I wish we
Vlad Guerrero is a fraud.
get Scooble back for this, man. If we had Scooble on the bump tonight, I'd feel so much more
Yeah,
confident.
100%.
Yeah,
Garrett
I don't know
Crochet
much about
even.
Nolan McLean, but I did a face check on him, and I wasn't thrilled
Bi-
based off of vibes.
big time prospect who came up mid-season last year and did not disappoint. You know, so it's not like he's totally untested.
You should have
Mhm.
gotten Schlittler.
He's like the or
Yeah,
Trey
so they're
Yesavage, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, but sure.
but you Savage, that guy
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
filthy.
Right. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
almost as cool as new Met Boba Fett, who I learned midway through the World Series last year that his first name was Bo and not Boba. I thought it was like Boba Fett from Star Wars, except Boba Fett. It turns out his name is Bo space Bichette, in case anyone listening was not aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good to
Yeah.
clear
Oh
that up.
god. Alrighty. Guys,
I think I texted you Boba Fett, and you were like, "What?"
I thought you were
What
just
are
messing
talking
around. You're like,
about?
is that not how you spell it? You're like, I'm like, no, not at all. Boba space Chettt. Nope. Not a chance. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen,
You know, Babe Ruth's first name is George.
do you know that, Ben?
I knew George Washington's first name was George.
Also true. Yeah.
Didn't know that about Babe.
Yeah.
I've heard lots of theories about Babe Ruth. A little before my time.
George
Who was
Washington
big
was
when
the
I was
president
growing
too.
up? Yeah. I just remember when I was living in Manhattan, like walking to school, and there was this bodega, and they had this big like magazine cover of David Wright with some like Gatorade stuff on it. Not a Mets guy myself, but that was the big poster I was always seeing.
Okay. I mean, cornerstone of the franchise for about a decade.
Watching this basketball team watching Mikal Bridges makes me want to gouge my eyes out. Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. A lot of fun today on this show. Newman, when I sign out, I'll stop the recording. Don't leave just yet. We just have to make sure it's all uploaded. That's but
Okay.
yeah, a lot of fun. Thank you guys for listening. Newman, we'll have you on again.
Thanks
Yeah,
for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's always a good time to talk about something that
absolutely.
you
We'll have
like,
you
you
on
know?
in the summer, maybe to do like a
Mhm.
trade deadline, like a baseball trade deadline, either recap or preview, something like that. Then
Works
We
for
could do a
me.
Dungeons and Dragons episode in the
we'll
summer.
won't participate.
Ben, up your alley.
Won't do that. Won't do that.
You could be a little gnome barbarian
Let's
guy or something.
just go to the gym together instead. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And with that being said, good luck on your brackets. Peace.
See you guys.